Hello, welcome back to the Dr. Kirstin Show. I'm your host, Dr. Kirstin Lordson. And today, I don't know if I have shared an episode quite like this one before. Um, I am, I'm somewhere between grief and growth. And it's an interesting space to be in where I've felt this before, and I definitely feel like I felt a decent amount of this in motherhood too, and sort of this like loss, right? This like old version of me was falling away and still is, right? And then knowing also that like something new is arriving, that I also don't fully have like language for yet, I would say. So, this is definitely going to be an interesting episode, but also experiencing grief because I lost my grandfather last week and he was 103 years old, which is absolutely incredible. And we're going to talk a little bit about him today in an honoring, but also what I do know based on the title of this episode, so I promise you're in the right place, but what I do know is that in so much of my work, I come across so many women, so many people who feel like they're doing so many things or they've tried a lot of things. I was just on a consultation call last week, and the coach that I was speaking to was saying that the client she had has just tried all of the things. Like this is not an uncommon problem or an uncommon comment to hear. And I, you, it's hard to say that you don't need another protocol because I put people on different types of protocols all the time as a functional medicine practitioner. But the thing is that at the same time, we're not just doing another protocol. What really needs to happen is yes, there may be some physical body support that needs to really happen there, but what really I find people really need is a pattern interrupt. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So, this isn't really an episode, I think you could probably already tell that isn't going to be like a checklist style episode where I'm going to be, running off of here's the things that you need to do and stuff like that. It's kind of more of like, mm, let's call it maybe a transmission. And honestly, if you're feeling really exhausted and like you've done a lot, you've tried a lot of things, you've done a lot of things, but nothing's really working or clicking, this one, this one's for you. And especially too in the context of burnout, but it can apply to many different things. There's some interesting things that I've been noticing in regards to like what my body is teaching me. And I have learned this very well over the years as far as what my body has been teaching me and what the symptoms are communicating to me, right? As in the body is always communicating and it uses many different types of symptoms in order to get you to listen, right? And that's so much of what we've talked about in the past as far as when your body says no, when it forces you to do the thing. I think what's really interesting though is it doesn't just happen in our body. Like we in so many different ways we get forced to stop and do things all the time. And that is our energy, that's our soul, that's our spirit, that's our body basically saying, hey, this is not in our best interest. And I really do think that that in so many ways is like what health journeys can be, are opportunities for growth and for relearning, right? Rewiring and becoming the person that we really need to be in order to heal. And that comes into the identity and all of that. But currently, right now in my life, I know the signs of when like adrenal I don't want to I always struggle with this one because there isn't really a diagnosis for it. Like there's not a term for it. But it's just where I just notice that my body is like needing some support. It feels sometimes like symptoms of like stress. And I term it like that the adrenals need support, right? The adrenal glands that sit on top of the kidneys that produce stress hormone, cortisol. and also your sex hormones. The and I experienced that personally as I don't want to like bore you, but like hopefully I'm not. Hopefully this is actually turning into something good. But what I experienced though is like a lot of kind of like a faint feeling or like I start craving sugar and salty foods, which I know like when I'm going through the grocery store and I'm having to tell myself like, hey, that's probably not like no, don't grab that. It's not that I'm like telling myself no because I'm restricting myself. Like I literally know that if I start eating that, I'm gonna be like, why am I eating this? So no, that's not the same as like for me, I have very specific like sweet treats that I really like. So that's not it's not restriction in that sense. It's just knowing like okay, this is patterns that are like way outside of my normal. So it's just being aware of what those things look like. And for me, craving like I mean, I'm talking about like jelly beans, right? That are like in the side of the grocery store that, like the things that I just don't typically pick up very often. I've also noticed too that like coffee to me has felt, I literally termed it aggressive. Like, I was literally taking a sip of coffee and I was like, whoa, this feels like so harsh right now. And so I picked up, like a chai latte sort of thing. Like I didn't, I like bought like some powder and stuff and I actually found a really, really good one, which I'm really happy with. It's also very good quality. So I'm like super thrilled about that. But then I like took a sip of that and I noticed I was starting to lean a little bit more towards like matcha and green tea, which I shared so much about matcha in my last newsletter on my email list last week. So which I love getting to share details like that and like how some of these different things that we eat and different factors in our life and health tips can really help us support, our physical body and things like that as well. And and I just was feeling this like coffee was just not really sitting very well with me. So I just made that like slight adjustment and that slight adjustment. And literally when I took a sip of like the matcha or the chai, it just feels in a weird way, like it feels good, like it feels kind of life-giving, it feels lighter, it just felt a lot gentler on my system. And as soon as I took that sip, I was like immediately like so grateful that I listened. I made such a fast shift there to try something different. And it was a very, very clear moment to me that I was like, oh, like this is good. Like you're very much so paying attention. You're being very aware. And it didn't require as much of like I don't know, it just kind of just happened, and that felt really amazing. Also, I've noticed I've been really craving sunlight. Like I literally want to just go and like lay in the sun and just like kind of huddle up in a ball and just lay there for a while. And I've also noticed too that I'm just feeling a little bit like I mentioned like kind of feeling like dizzy, a little bit of like just something a little bit off, and I know that can be like a sign of again, not the right words, but like adrenal fatigue or just like stress on your system. And so, I'm definitely feeling a lot of that pull like inward. And of course, like I talk about burnout all the time. So I'm like I'm looking for signs of things like that, right? And honestly, like it's not burnout. It's just signs that like, yes, there's been some additional stress recently. And I've also processed a lot of like really big emotional stuff recently. So, which I've also heard like many other people are feeling the same way as well. But anyway, that's just like some of the things that are really pulling me kind of like inward to be like, okay, like let's make sure we don't keep like forcing and pushing here and we actually take a step back and really listen. And to me, that's what embodiment really looks like, right? Is like being able to kind of almost unconsciously make those shifts and do them so fast and so quickly that like before even you are like consciously aware of them, like your body is already and your mind and your like everything is aligned in a way that you are like making those best decisions for yourself, like automatically, right? And like that feels so good. On the flip side though, right? Like I've had these really, really kind of like interesting symptoms, kind of low feeling. And at the same time, I've also been noticing that like the world around me looks sharper. Like it looks more alive, and I do not have any context or any words for this. Like I still don't really know what it means, but all I know is that I've noticed that I've been walking outside and like everything seems clearer. And what really came out of like all of this, which I even just like really referenced, was that it really feels like something right now is just softening, not pushing, not trying to force things. Like I've been learning some huge lessons here around areas in my life where I've really tried to like push and force success and force these things into reality where and it honestly created a lot of messes. And right now is a very big time of finding the meaning in the messes and transmutation from chaos, right? Like this is that time. Um, and I've realized, like, in so many ways, a lot of the messes that I create are usually because I'm trying to force something when either the timing isn't quite right for it yet, or it's just not happening fast enough. And I'm just like, and I think that's like the right way to go, but I'm not listening. So I'm just like doing, trying to force something and getting, again, lost in the doing. And it just tends to kind of like, make a mess of things. And really, what I'm learning is that it's not just about like a softening and a slowing down, it's about like reconnecting and it's really just being. And I don't know how else to describe that, but it is this sort of like coming back to just like being me, being who I am. In authenticity, as much as that word gets, I think, overused, it's coming back to like what is my purpose, right, like what am I here to do, big questions, but so I think important to also consider as well, especially when family members and there's a lot of loss and things like that too, and all of it can just feel really foreign, but it can also feel really freeing at the same time. So yeah, like I wanted to talk a little bit about my grandfather and his legacy. He was just such an incredible man. He was 103 when he died, which is just so incredible. 103 and almost a half. Like just in up until December, he was still walking like a mile every day, literally walking a mile like around his neighborhood every day. And he had dementia. There were a few times he got lost and the local he lived in LA and the local landscapers and stuff knew who he was, so they kind of helped him get back, which is so funny. But he was just such an amazing guy. I don't want to like camp on this too much, but some things that really stood out to me because honestly, he lived to be 103, which doesn't really happen a lot often. And he also was like, not like literally just a couple weeks ago, was telling my mom, he's like 103. I mean, that's a pretty big achievement, I think is what he said, or something like, it's a pretty unusual achievement or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, that's where I get it from. Um, but it's just been such an interesting time to kind of like pause and reflect and really think about life and the cycles of life and just how it all kind of like comes together and seeing it through the like these different cycles of life where we have these uh rebirths and these deaths to self and new honoring like the completion of things but also honoring the new phases as well. And just anyway, I'm just seeing like so many overlapping things. I don't even know a lot of the stories. We have a lot of them written down, and I'm still kind of like working through a lot of them. But he grew up in Norway, and he was a lot of Norway. I was reading the story actually that my cousin wrote, and she mentioned that he had said that so many of the Norwegians at the time of World War II really didn't want to become a part of the resistance, but the students did. And that at that time, that's he was a student, a college student, and he just has so many incredible stories with helping some well-known names and people who have had movies and books written out from their stories. He helped what or a few of that, one of them at least, get out of Norway in like literally during World War II, and just just an incredible man who lived a really long and a really full life, who really loved his family, and just yeah, like such a kind heart, very soft heart, but also someone who really liked his privacy. He really liked his time. And he loved to work. My gosh, he loved to work. He was 85, I think, when he really ultimately stopped going to the office. And up until that point, he had just kind of become like a consultant. So that was something that he loved. He loved that. He loved golf, loved all of those things. And I always thought too sometimes that the love that he had for work was maybe sometimes seen as a negative because in some ways it did take away from a lot of family time. It's something I'm just always sort of like reflecting on because I am someone that also loves work. Like I love to work. It's something that this is something I love to do. And I've found a way in life to do the things that I love to do, which is such a gift. My goodness. And I'm so grateful for that, like, and to have that example of someone who, because I've always thought about that, of like, if you make however much you need to make, like, why do people keep working? You know what I mean? Like, why do people keep working? If you have enough, why do you continue to work? And ultimately, the answer that I've come through, at least, is that, we also need to have something to do. We need to have like a purpose. We need to have things that we are working on, that we are contributing in some way. And that can look a whole lot of different ways, but we are people who do need to do something. You know what I mean? So anyway, just as I've been reflecting on all of this and just thinking too about like how does one live to 103 years old? And it wasn't until just literally in the last couple of years that his memory was starting to go, right? Like it's a difference between still having a really active and very like with it life, all the way up to yeah, 102, 103. I mean, my goodness, it's just incredible, right? And I've thought so much about because you and being in like the health world, I also hear this a lot as well, which is that like people ask me like, okay, should I drink alcohol? Should I not drink alcohol? Da 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 da. And that there's so many questions around what people should do. And I think that a lot of it comes down to doing things that you love and finding like the joy and happiness, even amongst all of the hard stuff, even amongst the the really hard times in the lowest points because he was someone that I do think nutrition did make a big difference. Like he grew up in Norway, so lots and lots of fish, right? Like omega-3s. He drank vitamin D whole milk his entire life. Um, Probably not like the best. I don't know if I would say it was maybe like it definitely wasn't raw, I will tell you that. But anyway, I don't know I do know that nutrition is important, and I do know that my grandmother cooked a lot, and she cooked from home, and was, constantly loved to eat well, constantly cooking, right? And she, anyway, not to get lost here. I do think that nutrition and those things and lifestyle and movement play a big role. I used to say a lot, and I probably will continue to say it, that an object in motion stays in motion, right? As soon as he got moved into a home, which was the right decision for the family, he I mean, he passed shortly after that, right? So, and I do believe in many ways that an object in motion stays in motion. I do believe that there are these factors, these things that are very, very important pieces of longevity and of vitality. And the more that we can build those things out now, the better chance we have, I think, of living a long and full life, right? Happiness, making sure that we are managing stress and that we are eating good food and healthy food and that we are staying active. And I would say specifically for women, I would say very much so making sure that you are continuing to build muscle and muscle mass, because the more that you can do that, especially the younger that you are and maintain it, the like more healthier bones, like all of that. And if you are in your 60s, 70s, etc., it is not too late. And there are many, many examples on the internet of people who are literally showing you that it is not too late. But anyway, so like right now, I don't know if any of you are familiar with human design, but right now, the like it's the gate 42 that's open currently. And really what that means is that this is a season of honoring completion and about not rushing into the next thing and about really sitting in the fullness of what's been. And I feel that so deeply right now. And as I'm like grieving the loss of my grandfather and letting go and all of that at the same time, listening is so important because there's so many things that we can learn. There's so many lessons. There's so many just like I don't know. There's just a lot of stuff to witness. And just especially in this season, I think it's helpful to kind of see that it can be tempting to want to just like move forward and keep one foot in front of the other, but I do think sometimes that pause is really important. And when we don't take the pause, and I'm going to say this on like an even a micro level, right? Like so on a macro level of taking the pause to grieve and to reflect and to say goodbye rather than just like going forward and pushing on and not taking that time, it can in some cases catch up with you right later down the line. But on like even a micro scale of like in our day to day, right? If we feel like we need to take the break, right? We need to take the time. We need to do like a little breath session and we don't do it and we push through. As soon as you move to the next thing, what happens? You don't take the break. You're like, oh, like you just move on, right, to the next thing without ever listening or actually taking that time when you actually needed it. And then again, you're just moving on to the next thing and moving on to the next thing and moving on to the next thing. And over time, that just wears down your system. So this is where cultivating that space and that relationship and like setting the alarms and like actually doing the thing to like take the pauses and take the breaks when we need them can be so vital and it can be so important. And it's a practice in slowing down. It's a practice in taking the pause. It's a practice in saying, like, yes, I'm going to move quickly. Yes, I'm going to get all of these things done in the time that they need to get done. And yes, I'm going to be able to do all of those things. And I'm not going to do it at the expense of myself and my well being. That's a big one. If you are someone who has any kind of like health symptoms, like, where might that pattern be showing up? But something that really landed for me recently was that I realized for a lot of my adult life, I have literally been trying to force healing. I've tried to force a lot of things. Like I've tried to force not just healing, but success in like business and getting certain outcomes and wanting life to look a very specific way. And what I noticed in my journey was that like I chased protocols, I chased doctors, chased strategies, plans. I got 5 degrees in the health, I got 4 degrees in the health field and then one in Spanish. But like and multiple certifications on top of that, right? Not necessarily that any of those things are bad, not that any of the protocols didn't help or didn't work or any of those things. They were all a part of the journey. But really, what I realized was that deep down, I think this in part was that I didn't feel I didn't feel safe to receive, right? Like I didn't feel safe to really heal. But I think that's really hard because some of it is that we know we do actually have to do the work. Like I think it is really hard to heal if you're still eating a diet that of like a standard American diet of food that like isn't food. And that's the majority of the food that you get. You know, and if we aren't sleeping well, if we aren't managing stress, if we aren't moving, like if we aren't doing some of these basic things, like it's going to be harder to work against those. And on top of that, like even when I work with people in the mindset world, like I will look at neurotransmitter panels and just make sure that like body chemistry and brain chemistry is in our favor, right? Because if we're working against body chemistry, like you might have some imbalances that make it hard, right? To get and to feel better and to really see the results that you're looking for. So like all of these things I think really matter. And so I don't want to get lost in like, well, you just got to stop doing the things because it's not really the case. And I would say that along the way, I have learned something every single step of the way, which I do think that is a much larger part of this than anything. But also within 6 months of actually coming back to like me, right? And who I am and who I'm, what like unraveling, right? Unlearning so many of these different like patterns and conditioning and this forcing of trying to get things to happen in the timeline in the space that I wanted them to happen. That was when I started healing. That was when the endometriosis pain like literally started disappearing. That's when my business took off. That's when yeah, like that's when I had like three clients come in it and it was like a $20,000 month of like, like it just there's just things about what happened when I stopped forcing things that doesn't make sense because you would think that the opposite would be true is that it takes more effort and it takes the grind and the push and all of that. And I'm not saying that the perseverance or any of those things isn't important because I do believe in many ways that perseverance and just keeping doing the things is important because part of it is that it needs to become your identity, right? Is the person who does those things, which I am literally a person who does the things that keep us healthy. The foods that I make, the things that we do, all of those things, like they are almost innate, right? Because also like, I have a lot of degrees. Like I notice that like when I go to the supplement cabinet, I'm very specific about what I choose because I know a lot of this background information that many people don't, right? It's just there are these things that all of that journey gave me, but I don't think that it needed to take me 10, 12, like almost 15 years to heal, you know? And how did I go from 15 years of trying to figure it out to condensing all of that in 6 months? That's what I'm talking about, right? Is that it was letting go of forcing all of this, trying to unfold without, like, what I needed to do is I needed to learn to unfold it without controlling it. And I needed to be able to, like, literally let go of trying to control for every single factor and every single piece of the journey and really find, again, this is going to sound so cheesy, but really find like that inner strength and even I would say surrender in more of a terms of like understanding. One of the very key things that I have learned in a lot of this work is that if there is something that you aren't shifting through, we have to become very comfortable and like okay with the situation that we are in right now in order to shift out of it. And I've heard this described in so many different ways, but I really like the term of like, we just need to come to an understanding of what kind of got us here, right? And like how we got here, why we're here, what's here for us to learn. And then when we're able to like again learn those things, that's when we start shifting into the new space. Now there is sometimes a gap and being able to manage yourself through that space is really important, but that's not what we're talking about here today. Anyway, in terms of all of this, like what I really feel like happened was that I shifted a lot from it being something that was like coming from me being really strong, right? And doing so much of it by myself, and that I can just figure it out to, and I saw, like, I now see a lot of that as what I thought was really like me being strong was actually signs of me being in like survival, right? Doesn't that make sense? Like trying to force things, trying to like do stuff in my own time and push things and like grind. And like it was survival, which also, again, what I thought was like discipline was actually avoidance. It is like so hard to it's like I was reflecting on this and journaling on this, and I was like, that like this is where I even think that like even in like the coaching spaces we can get a little bit lost, right? Because we can start to be like, okay, well, you need to be more consistent, you need to be more disciplined, you need to do things in this way because that's how you're going to get results, when they're like focusing and putting so much into that space of like, I need to do it and I need to do it this way. It can actually be avoidance of like what's actually going on underneath all of that. And that's what I'm talking about here today, right? Is that it's those stories and those things that are underneath all of that that are actually driving the current reality and the current problem. And they are part of what is keeping you stuck from actually getting what you want. And I would really say that that's where like the real work really comes in, right? Is that like we don't burn out because we don't know what to do, right? We don't burn out because gosh, it's part of like we don't know what to do. It's also part of like I think we also have different um expectations. I think sometimes I was actually just talking about this with a friend, and she was hearing from somebody else that burnout and overwhelm and overstimulation can really come from unaligned expectations, which, holy smokes, does that not sound exactly right? You know, I think we burn out too because we get stuck in that identity loop where many people will align with this who feel burned out or overwhelmed, but like where you feel like you're overgiving or overextending or overfunctioning. Maybe you are an overachiever like me, or maybe you just have always sort of been seen as or seen yourself as the capable one, someone who never drops the ball, right? Someone who is always there. Um, I think too, when we have expectations of things looking a certain way, that's when we start to get into these stories of either like, I need to be the one to handle this and I need to be the one to figure this out. Or on the flip side, I need to be the one, or like nobody supports me, right? Like I don't have any sort of support. And you swing in this pendulum between these two beliefs. And there's really like a middle point. That doesn't mean that you don't ever struggle, but what it does mean is, or like have a challenges or difficulties or hard times, or that you don't have to face stuff. But it means that in the middle, we can kind of go maybe even between the two, but we are changing our expectations of what everything has to look like in this, in that week or in that season or in that time, to align more with like the way that it actually looks, right? Versus like this is how it should look. And I do think too, this is where we can kind of get stuck in like we try to do, I think again, going back to like burnout being like it doesn't really we don't burn out just because we don't know what to do. Like people know what to do. And there's so much information on the internet, you know, that like people know what to do. And if you don't know what to do, there are plenty of doctors who can help you figure out what to do, or people or coaches, or like literally YouTube can tell you what to do, you know, like here we are. And but ultimately, I think what really happens is that we get, and I know because this is, I hear this all the time, like I just need to overcome this, or I need to fix this about myself, or I need to fix da 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 da. Will you help fix me? Right. And it's not about fixing, because what keeps people stuck is that you keep trying to fix something that actually needs to be felt. What if instead of more effort, you chose truth? What if you created space instead of more things to do, more steps, more protocols, more stuff? That I think of an Instagram post that one of my coaches did like a long time ago, and it was like this long list of things that they used to do that they like no longer do, and they are like healthier than ever. And like I just think about the long list, right, of like the saunas and the exercise and um like really strenuous, intense exercise, like all of the time, training for like big events, taking all of these different kinds of supplements, all of the like filtered water, not saying that that's bad, but like all just so many different things, so many different factors that they used to do that now they aren't the thing that's holding it all together. And that really comes back to, again, in so many ways, especially if you align with this and are someone who feels like you put in a lot of effort and you do a lot of things, and that is your go-to, right? Is somebody who, instead of facing the underlying stories, you go into doing mode to ignore and to avoid. That's where this deeper work is really important if you want to move through where you feel stuck and finally start creating what you want. So, I have a couple of options. I have a free guided meditation that's a really, really good place to start. And I also have a breakthrough workshop. This is an up-leveled version of a previous workshop of mine, and it is the first space where I have really felt that it's it's the first place that I've really seen that really invites people to stop fixing things and about themselves and really to start feeling, right? To start getting to those underlying stories. And the new version will be out really soon. But if you jump in now, you can not only get access to the older version, which is very good, and you'll also get access to the new one as well. But like ultimately, the whole entire thing about this workshop is that it is designed to help you rewire what's underneath the burnout. It's designed to help you actually shift through the stories, through the things that are like operating in the background on like automatic and default, that when you then bring awareness to them and you shift them and relearn to something new, it's when you start learning and unlearning and getting like learning what you need to learn and rewiring to something new that you are shifting through, right? And then it's no longer about survival. It's no longer about your body literally trying to just survive and get through. That is then when you're able to make some of those shifts, that's when the thriving comes, right? That's when the really, really good stuff starts. That's when you start noticing that the choices that you make and the relationships that you have and the things that are happening in your life start shifting along with you because you are literally projecting the reality of what is happening in your subconscious mind, right? So it's everything that we talked about today is so much of a journey to healing and to feeling in the body, right? This isn't just about the mindset and mental work. Like you also need to feel, you need to process the emotions. Like that is all a piece that gets tied into this and with this, right? So if this has at all like aligned with you, which if you're listening all the way to now, like probably has, but if you have at all felt like you are broken and you need to fix something about yourself and you need to overcome this challenge, this like chronic health disease or this life problem or difficulty, like you're not broken. You're actually on a transformational journey to becoming who you need to be next. It's an identity shift. It's in many ways becoming a new version of you, but also returning to who you are without the conditioning and the societal expectations and the patterning and all of those things, which can make us who we are today. And we can find so much gratitude for those while also realizing that very many of them have brought us to where the problems are today. And now we're being called to make a new shift. So that's why I say that we don't necessarily need more protocols. You might have some GI stuff that you do need to work on, right? Or you might have some things that we like you need to support your mitochondria, or you might need to actually do those things. You might need a protocol. But I also think that at the same time, we need to interrupt the patterns. We need to interrupt the cycles, the things that are getting us into the places that we currently have created in our life so that we can get out of the problem and make something new. And in that sense, I do believe part of it is learning to pause. It's learning to take a breath. It's learning to stop and say, okay, hang on. Like, I'm going to slow down for a minute. I'm going to take a look at like what's actually happening here. I'm going to pay attention to what I'm being told, what is here for me to learn from, and then allow myself to do that so that I can choose something different and start moving forward and taking action from that place. So, if you want to check out those resources, I have the Breakthrough Workshop, which is will absolutely take you through all of the steps for that so you can get started. And then also, I have a free guided meditation that is again designed to help. There's a bonus 6-part reframe that is under 15 minutes to literally take you through releasing a behavior that is holding you back, and also potentially creating part of the burnout and then helping you reframe and shift it to something new. So really, really powerful, so helpful. And just if you are still, again, listening to this, what I if whether you start with the guided meditation or the breakthrough, I just start somewhere. Okay? Start somewhere, because if you are continuing to just push forward and to force and to try to get things to happen in the time that you want them, sometimes the most powerful thing that you can do is to stop trying to force and to be powerful, right? And to be like push things into spaces that they're not intended for, or they're not ready for. And honor the season that we're in, right? Honor the season that you're in, honor the season that you're like, if this is a time for you to step back and to pause and to learn and to listen and to figure out what this healing place is, like we need to honor the season. And there are going to be times where we need to push and we need to do the things. And there's like, heavy lifting things, which I'm very aware of. I run a business, right? Like, there are a lot of doing seasons, and how can we potentially hold the both and? How can we show up for ourselves? How can we be present? How can we slow down? How can we hold that while at the same time also knowing that there is a significant and large part of things that we do need to do, but there is a both and. There is an ability to hold both. It isn't an or. And that, I think, is where the art is. I think that's where the magic really is when we start realizing that there isn't an or here. There is an and. There is a both and honoring both seasons, where maybe this is a time where we need to slow down a little bit, or maybe it is the time where we actually can speed up a little bit, but it is being able to walk those intentionally and in authenticity with really listening and being able to say like, oh, this is what I need now. And I know I'm at the wrap up of this episode, but this just came to me and I think it needs to be said. But I do believe that that is such a big piece when it comes to health journeys and chronic health conditions and all of those things, because so many people are outsourcing their power to other people and to other doctors and other protocols and all of these other things, when what you're really being called to do is to start listening again to what you have to say. What is your body telling you? What does it want you to hear? What patterns need to change? What are the things that need to shift in order for you to really be able again, to end the patterns that have created the problem in the first place. And can you let that in and of itself be enough? I hope you like this episode. It got way longer than I intended for it to get to, but I hope that it really explores the nuances here. If you feel like you have been in that, place of like things are ending and you're feeling that new chapter coming, just make sure to take some time to pause and to listen and to really tune in. And if you feel like you've also been in a season of really forcing things and it's created a lot of burnout and a lot of overwhelm, where can you pause? Where can you soften? Where can you start to listen and just say, okay, what is happening here that is causing this in my life right now? And what do I need to change? What do I need to shift? And if any of the resources that I've mentioned here feel in alignment for you, please feel free to grab them. The links are in the show notes. And I'd love to see you in either one of them. And if you do find them helpful, or if any of the things here were helpful for you, I would love it if you would leave a comment or rate the show, subscribe, share with a friend, or even better, come find me on Instagram or really anywhere and leave me a message because I'd love to hear what really shifted for you. And yeah. All right. Well, thank you for listening to another episode, and I will see you next week. All right. Take care.